Hello everyone, and welcome to Michigan Whitetail Management's YouTube channel. This channel is devoted to bringing you whitetail tips, strategies, and tactics to help you, the viewer, be more successful. We not only invite you to subscribe to our channel, but also hit the notification button to be notified when we release new videos. Now, join us in the field as we release another Michigan Whitetail Management habitat solution.
This time of the year, what I always really recommend my clients do, and I do as well, this is the time of the year that we gather, like we had on the last video or two ago, we gather all these notes and we focus on what to do, what to change, and how to create a better full season property. And I feel pretty strongly about that. And I wanted to take tonight, because of the weather outside, and welcome you guys into the house here and kind of go over how strongly I feel about the design of these partials. The design of these partials that we are on, and I've told you, guys this before, is 80%, 75% of my properties that I design and that we create are on 80 acres or less. So what that does is that really hones in on needing to make a small partial very functional, and how to get the benefit out of that. Now, a couple things that I always hear that affects a small partial. I go on to a small partial. I talk to I start off by talking to the landowner or the hunt club, and then over the phone, and then we go into our analysis package where I come out and we put boots on the ground on your property, and I meet with everybody that's involved in whether it's you alone or whether it's a hunt club situation or you and your wife and your kids, whatever that might be. We meet and we make goals and we try to figure out where we need to. Where you want to end up. And one of those things, like I was saying, that plays into that is one of the hurdles that I have to get over every year, and over and over and over, especially on small parcels, is the influence of a neighbor. And the influence of a neighbor, to me, the smaller the partial, the more influence that a neighbor has. And it can be a great influence, and it also can be detrimental to a property. So on a habitat side of it and a design side of the property, there's only so much that I can do on a small partial, and you can do as a small partial owner up to a certain limit, and then you have to make that connection with your neighbors. You have to go the extra mile and connect with them. Now, the reason I say that is because if we design the property and we make sure all of your I's are dotted, and we make sure that property is going to function properly, you got your amount of food that you need, we got your browse correct, we got your bedding areas, we got your water holes, your hinge cuts, your everything that ties into it, that pertaining to not your neighbor's property that's 10 miles down the road that we did, but to your property. There's a key factor in talking to, after that is done, is to reaching out and talking to your neighbor and making that connection on where they're at with their own management. Are they doing any management at all as far as habitat management? Keeping the deer management side of it out of it as far as the age structure at first, just getting a feel for where they're at and what they're doing. And if they are respectful to what you're doing and how your property lays out, because it's a small partial, or they're not, and they're going to hunt your fence rows. That can be, to me, when I hear those steps, and that's good to know before you complete the design of a property, because a perfect situation is you let the landowner that whether it's a landowner that's cooperating with you or a landowner that is not and tries to hunt your fence lines, you want to use that to your advantage. And what I mean by that is, if you design a property that is set up to best fit your needs as a family, as an individual, as a family, as a hunt club, because of your entrances and your exits, and you're not bumping the deer, and you want to make sure you want to go the extra mile to make sure those deer are unpressured. There's ways to use your neighbor's movement to benefit your property. And what I say that is, if you're fortunate enough to have a property, let's say that your road frontage is on the south, your access is to the south, and your property lays, let's say it is an 80. Let's drop it down. Let's say it's a 20, and your 20 runs narrow, but it runs lengthways to the north, and it's deep to the north. Those properties, to me, depending on what your idea is, if there's a camp involved in it, if there's a dwelling on it already, if it's a barren piece of 20 acres, there's all kinds of stuff that ties into that. But keep in mind that on a small parcel, 20 acres like that, 2, 3, 4 tree stand locations, and a couple water holes, as many stand locations, as many mock scrapes as you have stand locations. So it's very easy to change that habitat. Very simple to go into. It's going to take some elbow grease, don't get me wrong, but to change the line of movement and the thinking of those deer. Now, are you going to hold those deer on your property? No, and that's where it comes into tying into what your neighbor's doing. Now, if we were to design that property to know that because of the area, let's say, and it's not a early season productive early season property, but it's going to gain momentum going into November and December, let's say the rut, for example, that you can hold off and let that property bake and just keep continually getting better as the days go on towards the peak of the rut and the days that follow the rut. That is a perfect opportunity to create a bedding area. If it's not already there, create a bedding area, create a line of movement from north to south, and to keep that feed internal. And what I'm saying is if you create your bedding area to the furthest north part of that property, anytime that someone tries to access that from the north side of whoever is north, or as whoever is to the northwest, northeast of your property, they are only going to benefit your hunting. And when I show this idea to guys, sometimes it scares them because they don't want that stuff too close. And I never put you never make a bedding area right on a fence line or anything that's going to get interrupted. But there's ways to do that. You keep that buffer between your property line and your bedding area. But those deer in that travel corridor system throughout that bedding area will know that there is pressure that is coming in from the north, northwest, northeast. And if you keep in mind that any time that the movement is going to be coming from your neighbors, which you can't control, you can try to connect to them like we said, and try to work together. But if they're not going to do that and they consistently enter their property, ride ATVs, whatever the case is, to the north, northwest, northeast of that property, that is something that can benefit you strongly. And the reason is anytime that they do that, the predominant winds at that time of the year are going to blow internal of that property, or inside of that bedding area that you've created, that we've designed. And that's only going to help you, because the deer, especially mature deer, are not going to go to the north until if there's a mass crop or something that's pulling them that way, cornfield, bean field, way more acorns than you have on your property, such like that. Now they will go north, but they're not going to go north when they know that danger is there and they know that their nose can be to the wind to access that food. They're not going to go to the north during daylight hours. That is where the power of a design comes in. I see numerous properties, probably 8 out of 10 properties that I set foot on, I see that they're not taking advantage of the uncontrollable movement or the pressure that is being created by your neighbors. So I can take before kind of my steps that I do before I go to a property is I like to I use Onyx Hunt, or I use my aerials, and I kind of look at what is in the area and what we're dealing with after talking to to you guys, the customer, the client. I kind of get a feel for what's in the area, and I can, with areas that I've never drove down the road before, states that I have never been in that parcel or that sector or section that I'm going into, you can tell by an aerial of blinds that are in the area that, and then you confirm these when you drive down the road and actually see them. But I can see those improper blind placements on neighboring properties around the clients that I'm talking to just from an aerial. And the reason that is blinds on the edge of fields, blinds out in the center of a cornfield, improvements that are made completely backwards for certain wind directions. Now they might be doing those improvements because they need to hunt it or want to hunt it on a south wind, but those improvements that your landowners that adjoin to your property are doing can benefit you because of them, let's say, trying to hunt a south wind situation, and on a north wind, if you're trying to hunt your property, it only benefits you. So without, the moral of this whole deal is putting this whole video together and putting this thought process into clients' minds this time of the year, is before you make the step into putting food plots, doing hinge cuts, putting roads in, having forest management done. We've always talked, keep in mind this time of the year, it's a huge deal. It's a great time to do it, but a money tree is not a habitat or a whitetail tree sometimes. So that's where a lot of the foresters and I disagree on some stuff, and their side of the profession is great. They're great at what they do, but a lot of their stuff is focused towards what I say is a money tree, an oak or a maple, or cherry or walnut that is production mindset, and that mindset gets you open hardwood floors and doesn't create the perfect whitetail hunting property like we do and we design here. So not saying that you can't have both, but if you have a small parcel, a lot of times you have to know going into it, are you buying the property for a timber management property to make you money, or are you buying the property to have both hunting property and also timber management, or is it strictly just a wildlife paradise? And that's where the design has to come in. Another thing that ties into that, because we're on the timber topic, is talking to clients going into their properties and seeing that these properties are designed to promote that timber management, and then they want to do these, or they already have done some bedding area improvements, let's say, and there's no way to get in and out to go into those areas that they've already created and get that valuable marketable timber out of there without destroying their bedding areas that they've created. Now they think it's just going to make it better, but many times it makes it worse, because it's totally rerouting your corridors, your line of travel, and so it's all a design. I love to push the design on to folks. We start our whole process on boots on the ground, ideas and goals, and then we go with a design, and that design has to be per property. It's very similar to, you hear me preach all the time about doe management. Just because your neighbor is doing something and he's got 40 or an 80 and he feels that he needs to kill 10 does, it doesn't mean that your 20 acres 2 miles down the road you have to kill does. And that's the same thing that ties into having these properties, that just because your neighbor did 2 acres of hinge cutting doesn't mean that your property has to do 2 acres of hinge cutting, and because the way they laid that out doesn't mean that the way this should be on your parcel. And one of the last things that we'll kind of touch on here in this design property video is always keep in mind that a food plot, this is another video coming into this here soon that we'll do, but a food plot is one of the quickest ways to destroy a small parcel. So before you go in and go in the center of your property and you blow a 2 to 3 acre hole in the center of your property where there's already maybe a small opening and you're just adding on to it because it's the easy thing to do, make sure that you put some thought into the design. And hopefully we get to aid you in that, but if we don't get to aid you in that, please stop and think about how that affects and how you're going to hunt it before you create the opening. And why I preach so strongly on that, guys, is because I see that step being before design all the time. It's an opening, whether it was a landing or there's just a sunny spot, and everybody knows you have to have sun to grow a food plot, and everybody thinks let's just go in there and expand it, make it bigger, and that can be absolutely detrimental to a property as far as trying to hunt it. And that all ties into the design of how to get in and out of that property. And you have to make this property, like we say, functional. You have to be able to function on this property and keep it productive, from what I always say is September 15th, 15 days before some of the openers here in like the Midwest and Michigan, have that all done. And that has to be productive from October 1st, middle of September, October 1st until January 1st, to get the biggest bang for your dollar out of your property. Now, if you're on small properties, there's always ways to take. One of the things I always get asked too is everybody wants to do a bedding area, and they want to do a food plot, and they want to do this, and they want to do that, and they want to put they've been told that it's 10 acres or 10% of a property should all be into food plot, and I've got this opening and it should all be brassicas and not. You have to take these properties per parcel with your surrounding area. So where I was going with that is if you're only able to afford 20 acres, make an executive decision before you purchase the property if it can be done to your standards, and how are you going to keep pressure off from that. And the answer to that is, a lot of times, is to have an outlet to hunt somewhere else so you don't overpressure the property. So that's a lot of the topics that come into the design of the property. As you can see, we're reviewing some trail camera footage here tonight, and pulled one of the cards, and you can see this is actually a water tank and a mock scrape setup that I have, and I love that combination if the area or if that location permits. But it's just some simple stuff like this, that this location here is, I've got things that I want to tweak about that location. So there's always things that you can change. But this area in this property that we had where this card came from, I mean, we've been designing this small parcel and trying to get it right, adding to it, and taking things away, stand locations, for about 10 years. So now, being able to do this full time for a living, I'm able to stop long enough and think about the productivity going into like this year, the 2020 season. So that kind of ties into the design of things, guys. I really want to push that it's design. I feel that it's the number one overlooked piece of the puzzle on small parcels, or on any parcel. It's all about design, and that's where we come in. Like I said, I've got going into the 2020 season here, we've got a couple of spots. I have to look at the books, but I've got a couple spots per month available here, so things are filling up quick. And the focus is because I put so much emphasis on design, as I think that has kind of gotten us where we are today, as far as these properties that we have done in the past that are performing, how they're performing now at their peak, is because it started with a correct design, and then you can add to that design as you go. But it has to start with the perfect design for your property. So thanks, guys. Like I said, hopefully everybody had a Merry Christmas, have a safe New Year's, and we'll see you back here soon.